Welcome to the learning module dedicated to the topic of narrative feedback. In this module, we're going to focus on three main questions. The first one is simply, what is narrative feedback? The second one, what are the affordances of narrative feedback? And the third, how can I provide rich, substantive, meaningful narrative feedback to others, especially learners in a learning context or a learning organization? So let's get started with that first question. What is narrative feedback? It almost defines itself, doesn't it? Narrative feedback is quite simply feedback provided in a narrative format. Now, if you Google the phrase narrative assessment, separate from narrative feedback, you'll find a different discourse, a different body of knowledge. So I'm intentionally using the phrase narrative feedback here to talk about exactly what I just said. Narrative feedback is a teacher or some other person providing feedback to a learner in a narrative format. Now that format might vary quite a bit. It could be in written format, and that's what we usually think of, but it could be spoken as well. In fact, in the digital world, it's quite possible to provide narrative feedback to a person with an audio or a video recording, or one could do it in real time, on the telephone, on any number of synchronous technologies on the web. But in all cases, what they have in common is that it's feedback provided in this kind of narrative form. So the second question then is, what are the affordances of narrative feedback? And I'm going to offer you 5. I call them the 3R2T benefits to narrative feedback. The first R stands for rich or rich description. So one affordance of narrative feedback is that it allows you to provide that rich description. It's almost like storytelling. You can tell a little bit of a story about what you've seen in the learner's work. We all tend to be drawn into stories and into narratives more than bullet lists and things like that, at least most of us. And that's one of the affordances of narrative feedback. It can be rich, it can be deep, it can be substantive. A second part of narrative feedback would be rapport. As you write a narrative to a person, your voice can come through, and learners can build a sense of rapport with the learners. This is especially valuable when you're working with learners remotely in an online or a blended environment, or even when you're providing feedback to a learner between class periods and they're going to read it or listen to it when you're not present. Sometimes a harsh critique can come off especially harsh if it's not cloaked with some encouraging words or a little bit of the voice of the instructor. In narrative feedback, you can add that voice. You can add some encouragement. Your tone can come through even as you write or as you speak or record the feedback. That kind of rapport can be quite valuable because it impacts how the learner receives the feedback. And if they receive it sort of closed off, feeling threatened or attacked, they're less likely to hear, listen to, apply the feedback. But if we can provide it in a way that's more open and encouraging and affirming, having built rapport, well, they're likely to use that feedback, and that's our goal here. A third R is that narrative feedback resembles the kind of feedback that we get in other parts of our lives. So in our friendships, in our relationships, in our work environments, in many contexts, we get feedback informally all the time. And usually it comes in small or large narrative formats. Sometimes people give us narrative feedback in the form of an email that they write to us, or when we're having a conversation over coffee, or it could be a little bit more formal as well. But that's a kind of feedback we're used to. And many of us tend to value and thrive on that sort of guidance on how we're doing. A fourth, it's the first T in terms of the 3R2T approach, is that narrative feedback allows you to teach as you assess. So if I'm giving feedback in a spoken or audio recorded, video recorded, or written format, I can actually teach the learner as I'm giving them feedback. I can put little teachable moments right into my feedback, which can be quite powerful, especially if our goal is to help learners continue to progress over time. In fact, that time is the 5th of the affordances that I'd like to point out as well. Narrative feedback allows you to describe a learner's progress over time in a really meaningful and understandable way. So as you're providing narrative feedback, you can actually comment upon a learner's prior work And you can comment about how this work resembles progress from the last one, or maybe it's very similar to the last one. And you can help the students sort of contextualize their work, have a sense of how they're progressing over time. And that can be quite a powerful learning opportunity for learners. So those are the 5 affordances. Now let's go on to the last question in this module, which is how can I provide substantive, meaningful narrative feedback? And I'm going to offer you 5 things to include in your narrative feedback. You need not include all 5 of these every time necessarily, but it's a good way to start. And there are many other models that people recommend for narrative feedback. I'm simply offering these 5 as a starting point. Feel free to look for and try out some others as well. The first one is this. When you're providing your narrative feedback, make it conversational but professional. So again, I mentioned as one of the affordances is narrative feedback allows you to build rapport with the learner. So leverage that in your feedback. Build a little bit of a conversation. That can be something as simple as starting your feedback with naming the person to whom you're giving the feedback. Perhaps you're giving it to Carol. So why not start your feedback by saying, Carol, I just reviewed your work and I have a few comments for you. Notice how personal that is. You're speaking in first person, you're naming the other person. It's conversational, but it's professional. A second attribute of good narrative feedback is that you keep the goal in mind. So the assignment has to have a primary goal in mind. What is the learner supposed to accomplish or learn, or what skill are they developing or demonstrating as a result of this work that they're providing to you? Keeping that goal in mind is quite critical, so keep the goal in mind. Sometimes it doesn't even hurt to start at the top of your narrative feedback by listing the goal, or early in your narrative feedback by saying, Carol, I've received your feedback. Remember that our primary goal in this assignment is that you learn, and you fill in the blank. Now that starting with a goal helps to frame the rest of the narrative feedback. So what do you do next? The third step then is make sure that your feedback stays focused primarily on that goal. So the goal is not only for the learner, but it's for you as you're giving feedback. So give them feedback, but don't necessarily give them feedback on every single item. Instead, pick and choose. Focus on the main goal or goals and give them lots of rich substantive feedback on that one area. If you get into providing too much feedback on varied topics, the learner will be distracted and they'll miss the heart of the assignment and the main message that you want to communicate in the feedback. The fourth one then is include examples or illustrations. Remember, one of the affordances that I mentioned is that it gives you an opportunity to teach. Narrative feedback does. So why not do a little teaching? Especially if you're doing it in a recorded format, I find it quite natural to give feedback to a learner, and as I'm doing so, to give them examples of what I'm talking about. So, for example, speaking of narrative feedback with an example, let's go to the Carol example. Carol, I received your assignment and I have a few thoughts for you. Remember, the main goal for this assignment is, and then you fill in the goal, and then you give some feedback about that goal, right? But maybe as you're giving the feedback, you say, Carol, as I was reading your paper, it made me think of, you fill in the blank, you give the example. Or your paper and your point in this topic is sort of like, using metaphors or similes, fill in the blank, right? So giving that rich description with examples and illustrations can make this a powerful teachable moment, and it helps the learner to better understand where you're going with the feedback. Have you ever had one of those pieces of feedback from an instructor where they made a cryptic comment to you and you spent minutes or hours trying to figure out what they meant by it, and you wondered and you never really knew? Maybe you had a chance to talk to them and they clarified it. Well, narrative feedback allows you to clarify it right up front. So using examples and illustrations are quite powerful. And then the last of the 5 is in your narrative feedback, give some suggestions. What next? What should I do? So even if you're not going to ask the learner to revise their work, maybe make some suggestions as if they were going to revise their work. Like saying, if you were going to do this again, I might recommend that you consider doing this, this, or this. Or if they're doing it in the future, or it's for something that they might expand, you might actually encourage them and say, I would suggest that you expand this further. I hope you find this valuable in another part of your life. And if so, consider doing this, or check out this resource. Give them a resource to explore, an idea to consider or apply. If you do all of those, you make it conversational, but professional. You keep a goal in mind, you keep your feedback focused on that goal, you use examples and illustrations, and you give suggestions. You will be providing some wonderful, rich feedback to a learner that they will appreciate and they will remember for quite some time, and it will help them learn and grow. So that's the end of my brief video introduction to this topic. You have some other resources to explore as well, and then an opportunity to earn a badge if you like.